So I have been making active attempts to watch more television myself on my own, not without Trish. I find myself, especially in the evenings, I can't seem to get a movie that I like, and then I just get a little bored. Maybe I read a little. I don't want to play video games right before bed because it's hard to go to sleep with that. So I've
Mm,
been working on this. So there's a few things that I've been meaning to watch that I've started watching again, and it has led me to a really fascinating revelation.
what's that?
Doom Patrol is just a more cynical, non-family friendly Doctor Who.
Mm,
Like the basis of the show is the same. It's it's these big high adventures that whose continuity and lore and everything do not hold together very well at all, and you just really shouldn't think about it. Every single time they just throw a new thing at you that's generally out of fucking nowhere. And they seem designed primarily not about telling stories, but about evoking strong emotions.
mm,
The difference being Doctor Who tends towards uplifting, not always, but sometimes, and Doom Patrol tends towards depressing, not always, but most of the time. And also in Doom Patrol, you got nudity and people say fuck a lot and things like that. But I've realized this because I'm behind a season on Doctor Who, and Trish bowed out of Doctor Who a while back, and I'm taking it in very well now that I'm aware it's Doom Patrol. Like I this is the thing I've been working in therapy with my relationships with people. Now I'm learning it with my relationships with TV shows, accepting it for what it is and not
mm.
expecting anything else out of it. And it means I don't love it, but I like it. It's fine. So, and hopefully it also means like with Doom Patrol that maybe sometimes things will resonate with me. I think this third season of Doom Patrol resonated a lot with me in terms of my current mental health journey and the mental health journeys of the people in the story. And actually, I mentioned something to Trish, and she's like, either you've been watching a lot more episodes than I was aware, or they've been kind of moving forward. I was like, no, the characters are actually making personal growth now. I'm sure when season 4 starts, it'll all reset as these things are wont to do. But for the moment, actual personal growth. And so that was anyway. Yeah, that was a weird revelation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Magical Talking Hat podcast, the only podcast in the world who's willing to tell the truth. Doom Patrol and Doctor Who are the same show. Stop lying to us. WBBC.
Mm,
Uh.
yeah, nice.
I'm Tony,
And I'm William, and this is episode 620.
which is 200 better than 420. Woo!
Wow.
I listen to a lot of McElroy brothers, and they have an arbitrary and pointless, like they're really into using the numbers 420 and the word 69, but like wholly ironically. They just really do. Ooh, that's the sex number. Yay. That's the weed number. So
So you
anyway.
suppose if ever in the future, I think we've talked about this before, this this Dragnet episode I saw where this, and it must have been in 1963 or 4 or something, and this teenager, the actor clearly wasn't a teenager, but he was supposed to be a teenager, and he was telling Joe Friday about how one of these days marijuana is going to be legal. Like he talked about it like it would be really soon. But anyway,
And
so
that guy went on to be a senator.
do
A state senator, though. Don't get excited.
you suppose that one day when marijuana is as legal and is used and all that stuff as say alcohol is, do you think people will tone down the jokes and the humor that's just kind of around it being forbidden and hidden and wrong and stuff, like, will 420 still be a thing that people joke about when it's not a hidden or mysterious thing anymore?
I mean, all we can do is sort of look at parallel situations. I think drugs go through fads and when they are fashionable, and that becomes kind of a thing. And I feel like weed is already to a certain degree that way. But I also think there's a component of age. And when you're younger, this stuff is all more. I remember being young and cigarettes were like we were all super proud. We would talk about them all the time and all this kind of stuff. And then I got older and was still smoking cigarettes, but nobody fucking talked about them anymore.
Right,
We
but I
just
mean,
that was just a thing we did. And
even
so I
adults
think
joke about marijuana right
yes,
now.
yes, yes. And I think that is going to fade, especially I'll tell you what, it'll fade around the same time TV and movies figure out how weed affects people. Because that's
Wow,
where the jokes come right now. Is you can just make up whatever the fuck you want about
that's
what they
true.
do.
That's
But
true.
you're at a point now where being drunk in a TV or movie is not generally doesn't lead to, hallucinations or trippy shit. Like it's just, and to the degree now that characters are just hard drinking and they're normal, but they're hard. Like, so once we hit that point, very possibly.
Interesting.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Ultimately it'll depend on what role marijuana plays in society versus alcohol, and already I think it's becoming more useful in
Well, see, that's
places,
interesting because
but
because even though alcohol in the past has been used medicinally, nobody thinks about it that way. I
no.
don't think. But I think marijuana will always be thought of that way, don't you think? Or do you think there'll become a time where people don't so much?
Well, research has shown that it does a lot of good stuff. The parts that do the good stuff is genuinely separate, chemically speaking, from the parts that make you goofy. And
Mm,
our technology is such that we're getting better at separating those.
right,
So I
right.
don't know how those will relate. But
Interesting.
it just straight up, we know what alcohol does, and it's other than for sterilization purposes outside the body, it's bad. Alcohol mostly only does bad things to you.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, the red wine, but like there's a lot of other components. The whole have a glass of red wine every day for your heart, A is not that simple, but B also can't be substituted with have a shot of vodka every day. No, like it's something specific about the red wine.
Which
Um
you get in grape juice, I think,
yeah,
by
yeah,
the
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Doesn't have to be red.
Alcohol itself, other than its recreational effects, and I mean, arguably, it's very subpar pain relief effects in terms of effectiveness versus dosage. Alcohol just does bad, and marijuana, other than its impairment aspects, as alcohol has as well, mostly doesn't have that problem. It's
Well,
the same
alcohol.
way that like whenever there's criminal activities when somebody's on pot, they are issues of impairment and you know criminal neglect and things like that, but you don't have like somebody got angry and beat up a bunch of people when they were high. No, they did not. Somebody got tired and beat up a bunch of Doritos in their mouth when they were high. Like that's all that happens. Like you don't have an angry stoner except maybe if they haven't gotten it for a while and they're angry about that. Like, people like you're a violent drunk or whatever. That absolutely happens. You don't have a weed version of that. So maybe they'll hold different places. I don't know.
It's kind of hard to imagine. I mean, there's really three drugs that are legal that we don't think very much about: alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine.
Yep.
And they like you said, they each kind of they're very different in how people think about them and interact with them. Like, I don't, I mean, because like people, I'm thinking of humor in particular. People do tell jokes about caffeine, but they're not the same kind of jokes they tell about alcohol or
And they
alcohol
tell
use.
jokes about alcohol.
That's what I'm saying. They're different,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
different kinds. Like when people joke about caffeine, it's mostly about how they cannot function in the morning. Don't try to talk to me if I don't have my coffee. But when they joke about alcohol, it's very often about being inebriated and how different people are different ways when they're inebriated, or I can't remember what I did last night because I was
Yeah.
inebriated. So it's very, very different. I don't know if there's like, I mean, are there nicotine type oriented humor? Really?
Um, only insofar as how sad the life of a nicotine user is within our society.
Oh, I
Shunned
see.
to it. You drink, fine. Caffeine, fine. Nicotine, yeah, fuck you, buddy. Um,
Nicotine is a fantastic drug, though. I mean, it does so, I mean, aside from being addictive, it has so many positive effects. I mean, most of the people I
you heard
know,
it. You heard it here first, folks. William says nicotine is a fantastic drug.
I'm telling you, I didn't really know very much about it until, I don't know, a few years ago. I just occurred to me that I know almost nothing about nicotine. What's the deal with it? So I kind of did a deep dive into it. And aside from being addictive, which is a big deal, of course, and aside from the fact that most people smoke it, I mean,
Yeah,
this
it's not distilled into nicotine. It comes with a bunch of other shit.
tar and all kinds of other crazy things.
Yeah.
But just as a drug, it has effects that I realized a lot of people I know would benefit from this. This would be a benefit for the mental health of a lot of people I know, which is probably why people use it. Um,
And because you look way cooler with the cigarette.
well, and one person I talked to about this said, "Oh yeah, well that their father's a physician." They said that's why my father chews nicotine gum. He won't smoke it because he knows how bad it is for your lungs to smoke it, and he also knows how addictive it is. But it's like, who cares if you're not going to get lung cancer from it, So he chews nicotine gum to get the medicinal effects. I think it is a little bit of a problem that he's addicted to it because I've been around this person and he's chewing gum all the time.
Well, and that's the thing.
All the
Addiction
time.
is always a thing. There's a problem with people and caffeine. I've
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
witnessed that.
yeah,
Um, as somebody
yeah.
who was addicted to nicotine, well, as somebody who used nicotine regularly for quite a while, I'm good without it. It's fine.
Did it have effects for you, medicinal effects
I
for
don't
you?
know. Most of my addiction issues are usually psychological, so I
Hmm.
don't know how much. I didn't notice particularly. I found it very soothing. But again, that may have been a psychological issue. In fact, I figured out at a certain point, part of the reason I found it soothing is I was smoking during a time where you largely couldn't smoke inside. So I would have to go outside, and that was just kind of nice, just outside, and I was by myself with my thoughts. And so I think the experience was relaxing more so than the nicotine.
Well, many people find they also find vaping soothing for the same reasons. It's
Yeah.
breathing in, breathing out. There's a warm sensation, feeling, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
Um, and I know some people have found that it works as an appetite suppressant. I never paid enough attention to know that. I certainly didn't get skinny on it because I never got skinny. But um, I don't
I
know.
think I think for a lot of people, they feel almost some anti-anxiety effects,
I could see
which
that.
which I found really interesting, and
I
it's too bad.
the one real the two very strong impacts I can tell from cigarettes that were very clearly physical and not psychological. It was literally two instances. One, I actually had a nicotine withdrawal headache one time. One of the worst headaches I've had in my life. I've never had migraines, but it was really bad.
Hmm.
And the other is one time working a restaurant shift and just on my feet for hours and hours and hours and hours, exhausted. And I finally went out for a cigarette break, and I took the first drag, and I could always feel, especially if I hadn't had a cigarette for a while, that first drag, I could feel something happening. And I think it was mostly an
Interesting.
endorphin rush. This was an endorphin rush, the likes of which I have seldom experienced outside of an actual orgasm. Like it was I took one drag and I was just like, oh my God, yes, thank you so much. I needed this. And that I do not think was psychological. I think that had to be nicotine based, but
Mm.
otherwise, I don't know. I always did it because I have an oral fixation, and because as much as I hate it now, I still think it looks cool. Cigarettes look cool. I just am
Yeah.
into it.
I do think oral fixation is a thing. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I don't, you know, Freud came up with so many things that are,
Yeah. I mean, I don't, and it's not like it's a habit. It's not like if somebody's like, you can't do that anymore, or like I would freak out or anything. But if I have a chance to touch my mouth or put something to my mouth all the time,
interesting.
I chew on pen caps, all that kind of business.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people
Yeah, yeah,
do
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I just like the whole cigarette deal. I don't know. I genuinely, when vapes first came out, was gonna buy a 0% nicotine vape just so I could do it, just because I enjoyed it. But I'm lazy and didn't bother. And then they're like, also, the shit that's in vapes is pretty bad all on its own. So I was
Sometimes.
like,
Yeah.
never mind.
Mm.
So those of you just joining us for the first time, welcome to Drugcast, where we discuss drugs and we say the weed number many times, so buckle up for that. No, this is a podcast. We have a hat, not that one he's wearing, different one. It is magic in that it has its own email address, the magical talking hat at gmail.com. And people, the greatest people, maybe even the best of the best, right into that email address, the magical talking hat at gmail.com, with whatever the crap they want. And the hat magically compels us to read them after it forwards it to us. Each one, its subject just says FWD colon, thought you might like this, like every single one. It's really annoying. And then we read them and we talk about them till we're bored for about an hour. So, how's your week been?
No, I could have been better, but it's not been horrible. The classes I'm taking are human sexuality and group therapy.
I do. I do, because you are live tweeting your textbooks to me.
Oh, I wanted to say happy Groundhog Day, by the way.
Yeah, I only was writing in my new food journal, and I was like I was like, oh, it's Groundhog Day. So how many times
Yeah.
have we done this podcast?
A Groundhog's Day podcast?
No, it was a joke about
Oh,
Groundhog's
about
Day
Groundhog's Day.
repeating. And this is
But this is bad news for you because it's sunny here. That means that
you got any
any of our
groundhogs
local
there?
groundhogs saw their shadow, which means more winter weather until the equinox, really.
Last I heard, Punxsutawney Phil, the official groundhog, has a success rate of 48%.
Hmm. I mean, that's a little less than chance, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Now, to be fair, that's almost certainly due to sample size issues. But no, I don't mean one groundhog, but I mean he's only done it. We've only
No,
bothered to fucking pay attention for
that's right.
what,
The
a
law of large
century
numbers, it'd
to
have
it,
to
but
be
it needs to
1,000
get
times.
way bigger
Yeah,
to hit right on 50.
50. Right.
And
That's exactly
48 is close enough to definitely be within the margin of error. But it does technically mean, as far as the data is concerned at this point, he's probably wrong.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, why would
Fairly probably.
it
but
being sunny or cloudy on the 2nd of February have anything to do with how much winter weather you're going to have between then
I
and
just
the
love
middle of
the
spring?
idea that it's there. If it's 52, it wouldn't be funny to me. But because it's 48, it's funny to me. It's like, if we have to bet on it, technically you should go against that dude because his track record is not. If you are playing the odds,
The story I heard about this was the reason that a sunny day means there's going to be more winter weather is because the entity who's responsible for making winter weather has decided there's going to be more and is taking February 2nd, making that a sunny day so they can collect firewood. So they'll be warm while they're making everybody else cold for 6 more weeks.
And on the Groundhog Day, he rusted.
But if it's cloudy or whatever, that entity, whoever it is, it's usually an old woman, it has decided, now, the winter weather is going to run out. I don't need firewood. That's
how is the groundhog get involved though? There are there are several things besides groundhogs that also cast shadows.
Right. It's a dovetailing of two different things. One thing is and it used to be badgers in Europe. One thing is a I'm blanking on the word. An animal that goes to sleep for a while.
Hibernation.
A hibernating animal comes out, and so people are like, oh, if this hibernating animal's come out, because remember, for people back in the day, spring is starting now. The equinox is the middle of spring. So what they want to know is the snow going to stop now, or are we going to have to wait till the middle of spring for the snow to stop? So when they see hibernating animals come out early, they think those animals know something they don't know, and they think, okay, so the snow's going to end early. So, but the story of the winter weather maker and the hibernator kind of dovetailed together.
I see.
And so you got this, well, are they going to see their shadow or not? So, but as you just pointed out, a person is going to see their shadow, right? It could be Tony saw his shadow, so we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter. This could be Tony Day. Why not?
Call me Groundhog. So in the neo-pagan / Wiccan tradition, which has been handed down via families and matriarchs for thousands of years, or possibly invented by a dude named Gardner in the 60s.
Right.
One of those. This is Imbolc.
Technically the first
Candlemas, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, is it the first or the second?
It's the second. It's the second. And
Rigid.
Feast of St. Bridget. And it is considered within this tradition to be the midpoint between winter and spring.
Right.
In that it is the endpoint between winter solstice, spring equinox.
Correct.
And back when I was practicing, a common thing within the Imbolc ritual was to have a fight between Jack Frost and Jack Green.
Fight
to see, a competition that sometimes was a fight. I've seen versions where it was arm wrestling, versions where it was a football game, all sorts of things.
Interesting.
And whoever basically gets to seize control of the season at that time. And I've also been in some versions where we're just gonna make sure Jack Green gets it, if you know what I mean. Like, he's gonna win. And other ones where we're like, fuck it, let's just see what happens. So yeah, this is a good time. But it does bother me now that I've lived here for so long, because I'm like, it is not the start of spring. It is not the midpoint between winter and spring. It is basically just about the point where winter has finished getting its shoes on. Like, historically, in the years I have lived here, this is when winter fucking starts.
It can be pretty bad in February, yeah.
And March sometimes. Yeah, no. So
sometimes March. Yep. Sometimes.
So I'm holding on, and I am starting to be aware. I think my winter blues are starting to creep in a little bit. I'm not positive, because sometimes I can feel depressed for no reason whatsoever. So I don't know if it's that, but I
wanted to ask you a question about
noticing.
That.
Yes.
Do you think so seasonal affective disorder, it comes during a time of the year usually when in the sense of the sun's course around, or the Earth's course, around the sun and how much sunlight there is, actual sunlight is reduced. But is that so much the problem, or is it more that the cold and sometimes it's overcast and stuff that you have to stay
See,
inside and
I
things?
wonder about this. Now, we should actually specify. I believe seasonal affective disorder is more of an umbrella term because there are certain people who experience psychological conditions and emotional conditions in other seasons.
Okay.
It just basically means something happens to your brain in a season, because there are ones that in summer and things like that too. And they aren't always depression. Sometimes there are other things. But the most common one is people get the winter blues.
Is that just in the northern hemisphere, by the way, or is it in the southern hemisphere? Is it the same? Their winter time is the same?
I've never talked to any person in the southern hemisphere, so I have no idea. The Coriolis effect means they probably don't have it.
No, but like
That's what it is. It's the way our toilets swirl that gives us this. No, I am inclined to think it is not about light to a degree. I don't. Light therapy research is real inconclusive at this point, but there have been some signs, but it's not specifically tied into seasonal affective disorder. But here's the thing for me, insofar as I've had it, it doesn't happen at earliest. It happens in late January. And that's when it's starting to get light again. So I wonder if it is, and most people I know, February, March, these are the months where it hits them the hardest. So I think it may be about the cold. The way I think about it, and again, it's very much a hypothesis. I don't know how it works for me either. I just sort of try and protect against it overall. I think it gets cold and it gets dark, and I'm okay with this. And then I hit a point where my reserves of being able to deal with that fade away. So like it gets all cold and you can't be outside and it's dark all the time and everything, and I'm like, I know this is coming and that's fine. And I get through December and I get through January, and then my brain's like, okay, we need warmth, we need light, but it's not coming yet. So
but it's different from, like, say, what people call cabin fever. You're not just
I would think, yeah. No, I don't. And it doesn't, for me, it doesn't. If it weren't for the calendar, I wouldn't call it seasonal affective disorder. It's just I'm depressed more, and it also manifests in specific sorts of depressions. I get a lot of, what is my point? What am I even doing with my life? That kind of depression. I feel I get very adrift during this time. And I didn't notice it until one time I was telling Trish I was feeling that way, and she's like, that makes sense. You always feel like this around this time of year. And I was like, I do? She's like, yep.
Interesting.
And so here I am. So yeah, I've never been diagnosed or anything like that. I probably shouldn't toss the phrase around like I do. Winter blues is probably better. But anyway, how was my week?
Yeah, how was your week? I was just gonna ask.
It's fine. I've been having a little sleep trouble again, which is surprising because for the most part I've been sleeping really good, but the last couple nights, like I said, I'm watching more TV shows again. So I'm watching Doctor Who. I'm also watching. I've gotten back onto Lucifer. That show sucks.
It does.
It really does.
How many
I mean, it
seasons
always has, but
how many seasons has it had?
Well, it's done now, I believe, with 6 seasons. I left. They broke it into parts, and so after the first half of the 5th season, that was when I ended, and we went from there. And I mean, spoiler alerts, but nobody should watch this show. First half of season 5 involves Lucifer being screwed over by his twin brother Michael, who's also played by Tom Ellis, and they end up fighting, and it's all crazy. And it gets bad enough that God shows up to tell them to stop fighting. And so now God's around. In case you're wondering, played by the Allstate guy, which I think is a solid casting choice. But you know how I always complained that Lucifer is like really dumb?
Yeah.
So's God. I don't think that's good.
Hmm.
I don't think that's a good characterization of the omnipotent being.
I didn't know you would have a opinion about that.
I strongly do, because I am a huge fan of Judeo-Christian mythology.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's
I'm
true.
not saying God shouldn't be dumb because it's offensive. I'm saying God shouldn't be dumb because that's a stupid lore. The omnipotent, all-seeing creator of everything, which is how they are listing him, and that's what they are purporting here, is dumb. That doesn't make any sense. And to be fair, I've been trying, because it's really bad to put God in your shows ever.
Oh
It's
yeah, I
way
agree.
better, like Sandman, from where all this originates, is really good because we have all these huge powers and everything, but there is an unknown, unknowable creator above it that we never see or anything. I guess
Yeah.
at the end of Lucifer we do, but it's very sort of vague. If you're gonna put God in your thing as an actual person, the whole idea has to be that it's sort of a simplified, like they can't say much and you wouldn't understand much, and the things they say seem like difficult, but it's not, you know, and that's what I was hoping they were doing here. It does not appear to be what they're doing here. They're making all celestial beings are just quite fallible, including God. And I'm like, that's dumb. That's a dumb plan.
But I mean,
Um,
but it's in line with how they portray other divine beings. I mean,
yes,
whoever's
it is
writing this
very
probably
much
thinks,
in line with the shit they were already doing. That is the reason I think the show is bad. You are
no,
correct.
I mean,
They are
I
being
mean,
consistent.
if when you watch, if you watch, if you watch American Gods or read it, they have Odin's in there, and he's got a lot
No,
of
no, no,
human
no, 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 no.
attributes.
Gods, lowercase g gods, even if you go back to their actual mythology, and let's be honest, we've all stopped doing that now. We just make it up in our heads as we go. Those are not omnipotent, omniscient beings, and they are not infallible. The nature of the Islamic Judeo-Christian God is that he is all-knowing, all-seeing, and infallible. At least that is how I have always understood it, which is why a lot of Judeo-Christian doctrine, in my opinion, contradicts itself because of this. And my wife has actually brought to my attention that there may be certain Christian denominations that I'm making the assumption they think God is all powerful and omniscient and through all time and everything, and that's not actually the case.
Well, see,
Um,
the thing is, I think what you're talking about is a popular conception of it, and I don't think it's inaccurate, more or less. Although I've run into a lot of neo-pagans who would object to the notion that their deities aren't similarly lofty and all that stuff.
except most neo-pagan deities and deities from the mythologies we like to steal from have uh purviews, have bailiwicks, they have mandates, they have areas of expertise.
I mean, I guess.
And by definition, if you are the god of thunder specifically, you are not all consuming, all powerful, because if that's the case, why would thunder be higher than anything else?
Okay, but like
And also, why would
sometimes,
you have more than one? Why would you have more than one all knowing, all seeing, all powerful beings that control everything? How can you have more than one? By definition, they would be a single entity.
I
because
mean,
within the distinction lies some sort of imperfection in one or the other or something.
well, I mean, a lot of times it has to do with a hierarchy, right? Like the all
Yeah.
powerful, all knowing one is at the top.
Yeah.
Everybody else,
But in a lot of cases, the all powerful, all knowing one still has their area. Odin still has the Odin things. There are exceptions. In a lot of neo-paganism, at the top of the heap is a goddess, and all the different ones are a manifestation there is. But
sure, yeah.
also, there's a version where there is a goddess and a god sitting at the top of everything. And again, there's a discrete line. So you could argue that they are all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, everything as a pair. But if you call them distinct entities, that means they're not like that otherwise, because otherwise they would. The concept of perfection, the concept of totality removes the concept of individuality, in my opinion. You can't have two things that are both perfect but different from each other, because perfection is perfection.
You mean perfection is singular?
Yes, because however you define perfection, anything that is not defined identically is imperfect. If the perfect, to give the horrible version, if the definition of perfect is you would have red hair, then a brown-haired person who was the same in every other way is imperfect, only in that they don't have red hair.
But there can't be more than one perfect thing, though.
No,
I mean, what if this thing's perfect as its thing, and this is perfect as its thing?
No. You can be the best of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But sure. True total perfection, in my opinion, is singular.
Okay.
Because if you're the perfect car, if you're the best car that it exists or could ever exist, if you are the platonic ideal of a car, you are not also the platonic ideal of a dolphin. So you are imperfect in that you are not also a perfect dolphin.
I'm not sure that the term perfection needs to be so specific, but I mean, it can be, I guess, because the perfect car is not the perfect pickup truck. But that's really apple, or the perfect apple is not the perfect orange.
I consider that a pejorative use of the term. I'm genuinely serious. I consider that a pejorative use, because the definition to me of perfection is the totality, the best of all things.
So
not in specific categories.
So by the way you define perfection, there has to be one all-encompassing perfect one that's a standard for everything else.
I want to go on the record as saying I do not believe perfection exists in any form, anywhere, at any time. It is a symbolic thing we have invented for what if everything was the best. I don't think perfection is possible. But yes, that is how I would define it. And that is how I would define Judeo-Christian God, who again, I do not believe exists. I believe that is how the religion has created this God to be that. Now, if you include imperfection and fallibility in your God, then it's different. If we can say the Christian God is capable of not knowing things, is capable of screwing things up, in my opinion, a lot of the issues I have with Christian doctrine go away. Because then you have a being that is potentially capable of learning. Then you have a being that might be wrong about this thing versus this thing. Then you have a being that is just doing the best. Their plan is just the best they could come up with. It is not the best necessarily. Infallibility and perfection to me go very closely hand in hand.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. I I have always believed that to be the definition. I understand it gets used other ways. It gets used by me other ways, but I have always believed that to be the definition of perfection.
I'm realizing as we're talking about it that I don't know if I've ever put in very much effort to understand what the definition of perfection is. I don't think I understand perfection very well. For one thing, whenever someone calls themselves a perfectionist, in my mind, I sort of correct what they're saying to, well, you're a precisionist. You want things to be precise, but what you're going for is nothing like, I mean, like I said, I don't think I have a very strong definition of perfection, but I know what they're going for is not that.
Well, and the other reason I can't is because the definition of perfection will include with it aspects that are subjective. So
Well, that's
you
what
have to believe in an outside authority that can say that's the perfect one and be
right.
objectively correct.
That's probably my issue is I don't think I have a very good handle on what perfect or perfection means, but one thing I'm pretty sure it does mean, and I feel fairly confident about, is it means there's a standard. And that's why when someone says they're a perfectionist, I have a mental objection, because there's no perfect standard that they're going for. They've got an artificial standard that they're trying to meet precisely. That's why I think of them as a precisionist, not a perfectionist. And I don't think I've ever bothered to figure out for myself what these standards would be, because I guess I don't believe in such things. I don't like these absolute standards. I don't believe in them. So, and I think because that's the only understanding of perfection I have, which is that there's a standard. Whatever else it means, I don't know, but there's a standard. And since I already know I don't believe in those standards, then the term perfection basically doesn't mean anything to me at all. I don't give much thought.
Which is weird, given we've just had a pretty long debate over perfection.
Well, it's not weird because it's not really a debate. I'm sorry if it sounded like that. I was actually,
I didn't mean it in a bad way. I was maintaining a certain definition, and you were saying I'm not sure that's what the definition is, or what other people think the definition is.
Well, you're right,
and that's very weird thoughts for you to have for somebody who's never really cared about it.
Well, I wasn't really speaking for myself. I was, like you said, I was kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit or whatever, because the way you're describing it, I mean, yeah, sure, that's fair. But I think the way I've heard other people describe it is different, but maybe I don't know, because I haven't really, I don't care about that concept at all, because it just doesn't seem to me that, again, the only thing I think I'm pretty certain about it is it applies to some standard that I just don't even believe in.
Yeah.
Now. So I don't really think about
Me neither.
it. But you're saying that that you,
but I should say, there's lots of things I don't believe in that I still think about a lot, especially in a narrative context.
Well, but see, I don't think of God too much in a narrative context because I believe in God, but I don't think of God as a standard. I don't really meditate on the perfection of God, whatever that even would be. I mean,
I've never been 100% clear on how you define God for yourself, honestly.
I guess I've always thought, even when I was quite young, I've always thought that defining God was a strange thing to do. Like the whole point of God is that, like when I studied religion in college, I was exposed to religions that expressly said, you can't say what God is. You can maybe say some things that God isn't, but you can't say what God is. And that resonated with me completely, because that's the way I felt growing up the whole time. When people would say anything positive about or certain about God, sometimes it, like the whole omnipotent, omniscient stuff. I mean, that sounds like it would make sense, but on the other hand, it's like, that means something to us, right? That means something to us in our own time and space bound understanding. I mean, do we really understand God so much that we can say that and really even know what we're talking about? So I don't know.
Now, see, I find this very interesting, because So you're not saying that God is of a concept that is unarticulatable. You're saying God is of a concept that is inconceivable, essentially.
Uh,
At least in any specific sense.
I guess so. I, I would have probably said in our, you can't articulate it, but probably because it's hard, it's hard for us to imagine how.
But no, this is a very specific thing. So when you are talking about God, the God that you believe in your head, do you know what you mean? Let's take it as read that you would be unable to find the power of language to express an accurate definition. I think that makes sense. I'm fine with that. In your mind, though, do you know what you mean when you say God?
I know what I have experienced in what I perceive as my relationship with God. I know what I've experienced in terms of that relationship. But
Interesting.
I don't know if that gives me insight really into what outside of that experience God is or is not. And nor am I concerned about it, honestly. It's like it's not just that I can't know. I don't, because I don't think I can know. It's also that I don't, it doesn't concern me what God is outside of that context, because why should it concern me, for one? But even if it did concern me, there's no point. And maybe they're both related.
Well,
Maybe the reason I'm not concerned is because I don't think I
with respect, you do this a lot of
can.
something doesn't concern me, therefore I never think about it.
Well,
And I find that a patently false thing. There's plenty of things that don't matter to me. And also, I don't believe it's true in you, because I've had conversations with you about things that I'm like, there's no way he gives a shit about this, but he'll still talk about it. And so if
sometimes.
it feels a little disingenuous to be like, it never seemed important, so I've never thought about it. You are thinking 24/7, 365 all the time about all things. I
All
don't
things.
believe that there are things you don't think about.
I can't possibly think of all things. There are a lot of things I don't really give much thought of, or have never given any thought to, really, until someone's brought it up. Like this whole thing about you
Like
talking
what
about
God
perfection.
is.
Well, some aspects of God that other people think very hard about. I don't. Sometimes I'm surprised at the things people think about God or any
I'm
other
not
thing.
talking about aspects. I'm talking about what God is.
Well, but see, when you say that, what does that mean? Thinking about what God
What
is?
does that mean to you?
As I said, all I know is what my experience is, and outside of that, I don't really think about it much, or really at all.
I don't, my brain genuinely cannot conceive of what you are saying. I genuinely can't understand believing in a higher power based solely on interactions which have to have been heavily interpreted by your brain to define them as relationship with God, and yet essentially spend little to no time thinking about what that might be. Like I don't think I could make my brain do that. I don't understand how a human brain. I do not. I don't understand what you say. I don't.
Maybe it's more
I
like
don't. The idea
I
makes zero sense to me as a. It seems to me like a paradox.
I hear what you're saying. Maybe it's more
There's
accurate to
nothing
say.
that I believe in that I don't think about.
Well,
And
I
in
do
thinking
think about
about,
it. I think
part
about
of that does involve trying to define it in my brain. To me, I think that is a base concept of thinking about anything, is
right,
working to
but
define it.
outside of, I do think about it in context of the relationship. Like
What does
when
that mean? What does that mean?
well, as you said, to have a relationship with God, whatever God is, there has to be a context, as you pointed out, which of course there is. So there's a context of, I don't know, a conceptualization of a kind of interaction and conversation. Sometimes it's even, you could even say it's verbal, but not always. But it's always symbolic, I guess. But I mean, like this again, it's easier to say what it's not. There's no reason for God to take on a sex or gender, for example. There's no reason
Yeah.
for God
Yeah.
to take on any characteristics. There's no reason to.
None of that is what I'm talking about at all. It may
Okay.
be easier to say what it is not for the purposes of me not understanding. I understand all the things it's not. What is it?
I mean,
What is God, even in the most nebulous conceptual level for you?
uh, the creator of all things, I guess. A
Okay,
creator.
a creator. So you believe that something created existence?
Yes, but I don't. I am not confident in my, you know, that that's one way to describe it in my limited, uh you know, the limited scope of concept that I have.
Yeah, I mean it's fair. I mean, even devout members of very serious denominations of hardcore religions will be like, the human brain can only grasp the barest sliver of what God is.
I mean, I do
And I'm
believe that. I mean,
fine
if
with
someone
that.
asked me if I believe everything was created and God created it, the obviously my answer is yes.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but if they take that answer and they also think God created everything, and then they add a whole bunch of stuff to it that's in their head that's not in my head, then we're not talking about the same thing, even though we've used that same word creator, you know?
Very much so. Yes, yeah.
So
You
it's
not
complicated.
none of that is part of what I'm asking at all. I
Oh,
understand
okay.
that. That to me is a very simple idea that I absolutely understand and was not at all bringing up here.
Okay.
So you believe something created existence, and you believe you currently have a relationship with this something.
Yep.
But as to what this something might be, in anything more specific than a thing that created the universe that I currently have a relationship in, you not only don't know, but you don't even think about.
Well, what do I need to think about exactly?
Well, I mean, if this is the sum total of your thoughts on God, who cares?
Yeah, that's why I don't talk about it.
So
What is there to say?
so your perspective is God exists, but who cares?
I mean, I care
Why do you care?
because I value that relationship.
What is that relationship?
When
That's the part you supposedly can identify and define. What is your relationship with God? What does it mean? What does God give to you? What interaction, if any, have you had? What does that grant you? What impact does that have on your life?
well, I mean, that's actually a really huge question. I mean, I think it'd be difficult to answer, in just a
And
few words.
absolutely. But it's something that if I believed in such a thing, I would be thinking about 24/7. Like,
Uh, it.
okay, I'm being glib. But I don't know.
Do you think of your marriage 24/7?
No, but I think about it a lot, and I think about what it means to me and what it does for me and how I define it
Sure.
regularly. And
It's
I could
really,
describe it to you right now. I got to admit, it would be nuanced and things, but I would be able to say something. And I certainly wouldn't say, outside the fact that I like it, I don't really seek to define it at all. No, I'm seeking to define it often, a lot, and
no,
actually working to define it more and more so that I can get the most out of it.
sure, marriages are like that,
God's
but
not
I'm
like that.
not my relationship with God. No.
What is your relationship with what is there a benefit for you in your life having? Let's start there. Do you get any benefit from having a perceived relationship with God? Doesn't have to be a direct thing. Is there something about the fact that exists that you use within how you live your life that you consider beneficial? Let's start there.
Benefit.
I mean, I can even boil it down further. Would your life be any different in any possible way if you didn't believe in God?
Um, I don't. I don't know. I
See,
mean,
we get real close to the place where it, I almost would define that as not believing in something. If it's like it just seems so arbitrary. I have nothing I can explain or even understand myself about a relationship that I believe exists, but I can't define in any way or understand myself. So you just have a hunch that there's a God, sort of. I mean, I don't understand where your belief comes from. If you have not ever felt any influence from God or this relationship,
I felt an influence. Sure.
what would those be? To me, that would be your life would be different if you didn't believe in God. Or are you
I mean,
saying that the influences happened whether or not you believe?
oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea for sure. Um, Arbitrary. You use that word arbitrary. I'm not so sure it isn't arbitrary. Um, I mean, belief, faith, whatever. To me, it's this is something I've thought about. Just that concept, not so much God or not God or whatever, for a long time. And I don't think I've ever adequately understood it. Now, as you're talking about it, I'm getting an idea of what you think of it. I think it's what most people think of it. Mm, but I don't. I don't know if I've figured it out what it really is. I mean, you're framing it kind of as a, well, it's something you're doing for a specific reason you can name, like a benefit or something like that. And yet I struggle to come up with anything like that. And I'm not saying there isn't something like that either. I'm just saying um, something about that those concepts don't fit the my understanding of those concepts and making them fit with the experience I have. But
Because
then again,
I have had faith in the past of in higher powers, and I think I could loosely define what that meant to me and what I sort of thought that is. To be honest, my versions of faith have always been relatively agnostic, honestly.
mm,
And it was one of those where I'm like, yeah, some of this may just be the way my brain is processing things and thinking in these terms they are symbolic tools for me, in which case they don't exist, that kind of thing. But what you're describing at this point either sounds to me like me saying my favorite team in the Big Ten is the Hawkeyes. I guess it's true because I live in Iowa City, but I don't really give a shit about any of it. But yeah, if you made me pick, that's the one I would pick. Or you're talking about a situation in which you have a sense of presence and a sense of relationship with just a void of definition that would honestly haunt me for all my days.
Mm.
I would be desperate to put some concept that I could understand within that. And if what you're saying is you have that, but you couldn't verbally define it, that I get. But that doesn't seem to be what you're saying. It's saying you have it, but you also couldn't, like, you don't get it either. You're just like, yeah, there's a thing. What
Well,
about, tell me something about the thing. I can tell you 0 things about the thing, but there is a thing. Actually, I take it back. One thing, that it created the universe. And to me, if I had that genuine feeling, it would be it would be a void. It would be this weird, disconcerting black hole within me that I would like. I need some meaning. I need some sense of understanding. Unless it's just you like the Hawkeyes. And then I get it, but then it's like I believe in God, but to a degree that I might as well not believe in God. So
I mean, so, you know, my whole life there have been lots of conceptions presented to me.
yeah.
Particularly the Christian conception.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, but I feel like it's a tool. I feel like it's a tool that I and maybe other people are using to sort of, like you said, put some kind of something on that weird, you know, mysterious scaffolding to ground it somehow, so that it's not just this, like you said, void you're staring into that's just going to make you nuts or something. But you know, that's how I see it. That's how I see the Christian story, is just that. And then there are other stories that I think do just as well.
But
those
you
might
have a strong belief that behind all that is something.
Mm-hmm.
You're not actually agnostic, where you're like, yeah, there's all these different ones, and if there is a thing, it's probably not quite like any of those, and maybe there's not. I don't know. That to me is agnostic, and you're not
Right.
that.
Mm-mm.
You're like, no, it's not this, it's not this, but it's definitely something. I have no idea what either, but it's definitely
Right.
something.
Right.
That's the black hole to me. I don't
doesn't-
know how I would be like. I mean, do you take comfort in the belief? Is it comforting at all? Does it make you feel anyway?
Yeah, I would say comfort.
I mean, does it make you feel good? Do you feel better than the thought of there not being a creator? Do you think you would be sadder if you didn't think there was a creator?
Mm-mm. It's more of
I mean,
a
it really comes down to, does it impact, has it ever, does it at all impact your life in any form?
sure. I think I mean, yes and no, because I mean, yes, it definitely has, but it's more of a, like, if I was the last person on earth somehow, I don't think I would feel alone. And
Do you ever
if
feel alone now?
no, so I suspect that, you know, if that's true, and if do I know that's true? No, but I mean, if someone asked me, I said, all right, you don't know for sure scientifically, William, that that's true, but I'm going to put a gun to your head, and you're going to tell me if you were the last person on earth, you're going to feel alone, and I will shoot you if you don't tell me the truth. I would say no, I wouldn't feel alone.
No, belief is belief. I'm certainly not wanting
Yeah.
anyone to try and prove God exists.
Absolutely certain. But I think that fact, or that thing I believe is a fact, you know, I'm not ever going to be the last person on earth, but I think that whatever makes that true does help me in my day-to-day life,
Yeah.
right?
Does the prospect of being actually alone seem like real bad to you? But no, I mean, if there wasn't a God and you were actually alone.
I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to, I mean, I would have to guess so,
Okay.
but I don't know that. I mean,
Because
because
as somebody who's been alone and felt alone, I mean, and there are myriad versions of that. What you are describing, yeah, I don't know that it would impact my life. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess we're both in that perspective of you don't know what it's like not to have that, and I don't really know what it's like to have that. But
see, when you ask, like, what if God didn't? So someone could come to me and prove to me that God didn't exist. Would
no,
that change?
no.
But
I'm saying, what if you
no,
didn't
no, no.
have this belief?
But that's what it would take. So
Okay.
let's say someone told me that and I believed them. And so I no longer had the belief. Well, then I would just think that that feeling I had of never being alone wasn't God, it was something else, but it must still have been there. I just thought it was God. And I might still not feel alone. It'll just be something in my brain, or I'd explain it some other way.
Wow. I mean, this feels so much to me like God is a thing, but doesn't matter at all. That's what it feels like you're
Matters
saying.
to me.
In what way?
Well, in the way I just said, I think
No,
it,
the way you just said was if there was no God, I'd feel exactly the same.
no, I said I would, this is completely hypothetical.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
said
yeah.
I would probably just psychologically shift to some other explanation. But obviously, I don't think that that is even possible because I think it's God, and I don't think anyone could tell me that there's no such thing.
But that sense that you are never alone matters to you,
It
is
sure,
of
yeah.
importance.
I think it must be, yes.
All right.
I
There we
mean,
go.
it's hard to
I
say
I
that if
genuinely feel like the sentences you said earlier were not saying that. So
it's well,
I know it's hypothetical. You literally can never give your opinion on anything unless you
it's
genuinely
not.
have concretely experienced it. I get it.
That's the point. It's like, how do I know for sure? I don't.
Ugh.
It's
How do
not
you
like
have converse? How do you function in class? How do
I
you
felt
possibly have class conversations? By definition, they're talking about
because
things you have not
Tony,
experienced.
most people who talk about God that I've experienced do not talk about it like this. They would say something different. They would say, "Well,
Of course,
I
I
had
wouldn't have these conversations with them. I don't.
never
Sorry.
mind. We can just
No,
move on to something else.
it's
I think.
well. I mean, we're super over time, so
Well,
I'm.
sometimes I think you just think I'm trying to be difficult, and I'm not. I'm doing the best I can. I'm not
I
just
know, but
pretending here.
you
I'm not
you
just
say a lot of things that in my brain are actual impossibilities.
okay. I mean, I'm
And
sure I
so it's hard for the only thing I can think of is you're either lying or wrong. And I never think you're lying. I never think you're lying. But I also think you're really smart. And so I I no, I mean this is on me. This is absolutely on me. It's
that I can't. I don't. It's hard for me to believe that's true, Tony, because I've been in this situation before. I'm the common denominator. I don't think you are.
yes.
So
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying how I choose to respond to the person you are is on me. And I love the person that you are. I love you more than probably everyone but two or three people in the world. And when we hit this point, I get this feeling like there's just a gap between us that will never go away. And I will never, there is a level of sort of intimacy and interaction that we won't ever have. And I just find that incredibly frustrating. And it's not anybody's fault. It's no one's fault. but it doesn't mean it doesn't make me feel bad. And it's not it. I swear to you, it's nobody's fault because we don't get to pick how our brains work. But sometimes I feel so close to you, and then other times I feel like I just hit a point where I'm like, is this a different species? Because it seems like on some things that I consider baseline human interaction aren't there. And maybe actually you're not particularly unusual, but I've just never had a relationship with anybody like this. Or I've just said fuck it and not had a relationship with you. But you are one of the nearest and dearest people in my life. And so when we do hit this point, my heart cries out because I don't it is the last little step of really sort of knowing each other that I don't think is ever crossable. And that's, I don't ever get that sense with other people because there's nothing so abrupt.
Well, I'd like to be able to do something about it because
I don't know that it's possible. I mean, I don't know. You know, we both change and grow and evolve, and honestly, I think we have become closer not only due to time, but because of how you and I have both grown as people. I think that makes a big difference.
yeah, I think that's true. Sure.
So maybe there's a hope, but it's nobody else in the world do I ever say, I don't know what you're talking. Well, never do I say sincerely, I don't understand what you're saying.
Right. But I mean, I don't enjoy frustrating people. I don't.
No. And I know. And it is, that's what I say. It's on me. It is unfair and inappropriate for me to express these kind of things in a way that I know are going to make you feel bad because it's not like you're controlling this.
I'm
And
not.
honestly, the real answer is probably if we had managed a throuple with Jazz, she could have bridged the gap.
It's possible.
Sometimes I think Jazz gets both of us in ways that we don't get each other. But
that
it's
could be.
Also, this is probably a sore spot for me. I've said many times I used to have faith in a higher power and I don't. And a big part of me misses that. A big part of me wishes I did.
Well, I mean, and see, for me, it's not, I mean, it's not it's hard
it
to
appears
describe.
to just be a natural function. It's no more interesting or impressive to you than the fact that you breathe.
Exactly. I haven't achieved it. I didn't really choose it.
No.
You know?
And faith isn't like that, which is why I don't seek it out because I know you can't get it. It happens. It's belief. You can't make yourself believe things. I mean, you can, but it's scary and involves a lot of questionable ethics. You can't make yourself sincerely believe something, which is why I know I can't make myself have faith.
Well,
but I also know that I did at one time.
People tell stories about it though. And that's what I was getting at before was I've heard people say, I felt empty and alone, and then I found Jesus, and now I don't feel that way anymore. I don't relate to that.
No,
I can't
but
relate
also I've never heard a story where somebody was like, I felt empty and alone, and I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can find Jesus. And I went to try and find Jesus, and I succeeded.
Right, no. But it also,
and I don't have. I'm talking about.
Those people have something. If you ask them, what's the benefit? Is your life better? They have something they think they can compare it to.
Oh yeah.
I don't have anything I can compare it to. I can only.
You were born having found Jesus.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know what the process was. And I do think about that sometimes, but it's pointless really, because I'm not going to figure that out. All I can do is surmise, right? I don't.
Yeah.
Other people
super here for surmising.
Tell me they feel empty and alone and all these things that I don't think I feel that. I can feel alienated. I can feel ostracized. I can feel like someone's treating me like I'm an outsider or an alien, but I don't internalize that the way other people do. Apparently, I mean, but again, I can't get inside their heads. I don't know that. This is just what it seems like to me.
Yeah. That even when we're not talking about God, which when are we not really? It feels like a lot of times when I ask your opinion or your thought process behind something, your response is, well, it's not like how most people do it. It's not like this thing they do. And I say, cool, but what is it? And you're like, I don't think I can tell you.
I just don't know.
And that smacks to me of a defining yourself externally, which I don't
No,
think is good, or
no, I'm
defining yourself
acknowledging.
in opposition to the external.
No, it's about how to talk about it. We talk about things, how they're in relation to other things. I don't, if I'm not talking to you about it or anybody else about it, it doesn't,
You don't try and define it. If unless you're talking to someone, you don't try and define
yeah, I
most of
mean,
your beliefs.
and maybe it's because maybe I've tried at some point in my life and thought this is pointless.
Well, that's what I wonder. Have you ever reevaluated your faith after hearing about other faiths? I'm not saying changed anything, but at least said, they thought about it this way. Let me put that stencil over this.
Yeah, that's why
I mean, I guess you must have, otherwise you wouldn't know to say it's not like that.
yeah, I mean, that's why I was a religion major for that very reason.
Yes.
Was
Did
interested
any
in
of
that.
those things ever influence your belief, do you think? I mean, it ruled out a lot of things, obviously.
Well, what it did is it made me feel more comfortable with things I didn't know. Made me feel more comfortable that I couldn't answer some of the questions you're asking.
Oh.
Because I realized that other people had asked the same questions. They also didn't have answers, and it didn't, they seemed okay with it. In fact, it seemed to be an important part of their belief system that they didn't know. And it was okay. It was good, even somehow. So exploring other beliefs in it, like Taoism, especially, because it's all about, releasing the idea that you have any control or that you know things or whatever. And so you start to ask questions about, I'm asking this question because I want to know the answer. Do I need to know the answer? Even if there is one, I don't know what it is, but let's say there really is one. And if I work really hard on it, I can figure it out. Do I need to answer that question? No. Well, then I can use my energy to think about something else.
And I love that. But to me, if I'm in an idealized version of that, I don't believe particularly in anything. I'm willing to say, maybe.
I know.
But
I know what you're saying.
I don't understand. I like that philosophical viewpoint. I personally cannot reconcile it with faith. I can't say, like, I know nothing, but I really believe this. Is how it sounds in my head. I'm like, how do you really believe if you're like, I don't know anything and shouldn't? It is good that I don't. To me,
Please.
Wouldn't it also be good that you don't really know if it's true?
It's a
But
kind
again,
of,
you can't control belief.
and it's a kind of knowing,
Yeah.
it's how
See,
you just
I think
find the
that's
terms.
I think that's when I drill down into this sometimes is when you say things and I'm like, what planet are you from? You're clearly not human. What I'm desperately hoping is we're just it's a semantic, it's a linguistic thing. And you're not actually saying something that my brain can't understand. It's how we're defining our words or something like that.
Often that's the case. Yeah.
Except often it's not with you and I.
Yes. Often it's not.
And that I want that to not be true. I want it to be that. And that's when I start delving into, I'm just saying this and when it does, because I'm like, we just it's not that you're saying something that I literally can't conceive. I think maybe that scares me on a certain level, that
Or-
you can describe something that I don't even understand definitionally.
Unless it's just
I think
something I don't have the words for. I mean, some things
that's
are
what I
hard to.
hope. And so then I'm like, well, let's try some different words and maybe you'll get there, or I'll get there, or something.
I
And
mean,
sometimes I do, and sometimes I do, and
I've
that's great.
I've spent my whole life looking for words to talk about things that I've not figured it out. I mean, lots of times. This is one of them. I mean, one of the things I get frustrated with any religion, especially Christianity, is how confident they are in their own concepts.
Yeah.
They don't see them as tools that are pointing to something that's actually indescribable. They think they're describing the thing.
Yeah, no, I
And
always like the definition about religion as a paradigm through which a finite human mind can understand an infinite universe.
exactly right. Which
I love
means
that. To
it's a
me, though,
means.
that doesn't mean God exists.
No, it's a
That's like,
means.
this is the shorthand that we invented to talk about
Yes,
it.
it's a means to an end. Well, what's the end? Well, if we could describe that and talk about it in words that made any sense, we wouldn't need the religion, in my
Yeah.
opinion. That's why we have religion. It's because we can't. Well, that's the best we can do. And I love that about religion. That's why I like religion and different religions, and I like Christianity for real. It's not just one of the many. It's like the thing I like the best as far as all that stuff goes. It resonates most with me, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't want to mistake it for what it's for the end. It's just a means to the end. And if you ask me what the end is, the only thing I could give you are all the things that belong to those means. But when you ask me, especially when you ask me, I don't think that's what you're asking me. You know what the means are. You know what Christian mythology says.
Yes, but
So,
I don't think you believe any of that. When I've asked you to define God, you have not only not used any of the terms that Christian mythology used, you have frequently talked about how it's not a variety of things that are within Christian mythology.
yeah, that's
So,
true.
in my opinion, you have not remotely described the means to me either.
I know.
So, I don't know that I could tell you whether or not that's what I mean. I do know
Well,
what Christian mythology means. Almost every aspect of it is something that I believe you have pretty much told me you don't believe in.
not every, but yes, a lot of it.
So
Especially
I know
the
those means. Those
yeah,
aren't the
it's
means I'm looking for. That's for
true.
sure.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, that's just the best I can do. I
Well,
don't,
and
you know,
I think it's the again, I think it becomes a personal thing for me, not knowing. Well, this is literally something I've worked on in therapy. Not knowing stuff is hard for me, and I'm working on that. But you're talking about a level of not only not knowing, but actively not even thinking about it much. And I guess I can see the benefit in that. It sounds really hard to me. And that's my gut thing is I'm like, no, if I was like, I don't know what God is, but I definitely believe in God, I would be thinking about what God might be like all the fucking time.
I
And
mean,
which things sounded best to me and which worked in my gut and which sounded ridiculous and which meshed with whatever unknowable feeling of faith I had, and I
I
would be
mean,
doing that all the time.
there might have been a time in my life where I did that. I don't, I don't really remember, but I mean, at some point, I got to a point where that didn't seem like a useful thing to do. I don't know. I
Uh,
don't know.
if I start measuring my thoughts based on whether or not they're useful, I'm probably gonna go into a coma. But I'm being glib. I actually think that concept, not on a divine level, but that concept is something I'm literally working on right now. So I guess that does make sense. because there are a lot of thoughts. I mean, intrusive thoughts are a great example
Mm,
of thoughts
mm,
that you're like, you know what? Um, and it's not the same as judging thoughts. I mean, all thoughts are valid as they show up or whatever. But at a certain point, you stop feeding the machine that produces a certain kind of thought if you find that
mhm,
you don't find it useful.
mhm.
Um,
Yep.
I guess that makes sense. I am sorry I got frustrated. I think this is actually a very valuable conversation for me. This is very thought provoking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because I hate frustrating people. I hate disappointing people.
But
I
and
don't
this is a
mean
big
to.
one. Uh, and I can't make you believe anything, so I can't make you believe this. But like, you've done nothing wrong, and this is a concept that I have difficulty with. When I was 8 hours in the ER, and I was talking about like I was really frustrated and really unhappy. I'm actually more unhappy now because we have really good insurance and they paid several $100s and we still had to pay several $100s for that visit where I sat there for 8 hours and then they gave me a drug that I already had asked for. Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
um at the time I was like, this is nobody's fault. I'm real unhappy. I'm real frustrated. I didn't do anything, but neither did any of these people.
Mm, yeah.
No one, it's just, I mean, the microorganisms arguably like that's the thing. Like at that point, I'm blaming the microorganisms, which is like it's nobody's fault. It's the same thing here. This was a terrible podcast episode,
Mm,
and uh I got very frustrated. And I think I pushed you a little bit that way too. You did nothing wrong here at
okay.
all.
Okay. I believe you.
I think I did in a couple of ways that it could have gone smoother, but I mean, I wasn't lying. I wasn't, try like I was coming in good faith as well. I don't. It's frustrating because it's a thing exists that we don't like, but it doesn't mean that we caused it in any way either.
You're right about that. I don't blame you for anything either, for sure.
Of course, you don't. You never blame anybody but you for anything. But I'm saying, don't blame you either.
Okay.
Uh, no,
Fair enough.
I blame
That's
me
fair.
in specific things of I know what I said and did, and I know how I might have said and done them in ways that would have made things less stressful. And
Okay.
I do blame myself for that, but I'm also not mad at myself. I'm just like, yeah, that was dumb. Maybe try better not to do that.
That's
Um,
fair.
that's a big one. But I don't want you to like if you weren't uh, if you weren't the person with whom I had this problem, you also wouldn't be the person with whom I have everything else. Like you are weird as shit.
I I know. I told
And
my
I
therapist that. She didn't think that was nice for me to
and
say
I
that, but it's
love
true.
you so much. And it is so deeply tied in to how weird as shit you are. And I cannot believe for a second that anyone in the world who would claim to love me doesn't realize how much that is defined by how weird as shit I am in different ways.
Yeah, right about that.
Um, so I mean, and that's all. You're weird as shit the same way everybody's weird as shit. You're weird in ways that other people have somewhat more uniform things, but I think it's much more in what your desires are in interaction rather than like your brain not operating the same way. I think
Hmm,
what you are seeking in human interaction is not necessarily the same as what we all from internalizing society seek or it has to do with something terrible that happened to you when you were 6 that I don't know about. Like um
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it like that.
but everybody's weird. It's the same thing as everybody's unique and special, just like everyone else.
Mm,
You are really weird, just like everyone else.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and not all the things about me that are weird are helpful or desirable. And I'm working on recontextualizing those. And
I'm
that's
doing
what
that
therapy
too.
is.
Yep.
That's what therapy
That's
is.
right. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, this was a shitty episode, folks. We're sorry. Like, but no, I'm not sorry. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't know if you got this yet or not, listening for 12 years almost. That's what this, forget this, we have a hat, whatever. This podcast is our friendship. It's not the totality of our friendship, but it's a surprisingly large chunk of our friendship.
Mhm.
And this is our friendship.
Yeah.
And
We've
if
had
it's not fun to watch, if it's not fun to listen to, you don't have to.
We've
But
had
if you
difficult
do,
podcasts
I hope
before.
it gives you something. I
Yeah,
feel
me-
like we are thought provoking, if nothing else.
I hope so.
But even if it's not your thing, that's fine. It's our thing. This is always our thing.
Yep.
You're welcome to come along for the ride, and we do like you, and we do appreciate you. And we enjoy you coming along for the ride, but you're coming on a ride for our friendship. And that's what it looks like. But we do love having you. So smash that like button.
And the notification bell, just in case the algorithm doesn't.
Oh God, the notification bell. I miss the days when Dan O'Brien, late ages of the first era of Craig, and the bell had come out, and he just thought it was so dumb, but he had to say it in the title slate, so it'd always be like, click that dumb bell that lets you know when we do videos, which are these days. But if you need the thing, yeah, do that. No, but I mean, provoke some thoughts in us, people. Go to the blog, themagicaltalkingout.com. Give us your views on this. Maybe you don't feel it's your place, and it's not. And with most people, you shouldn't do it. William
I'm
and
interested.
exactly.
Yeah, we're
William
interested.
and I are. A lot of people, you should not weigh in on this kind of shit.
Probably not. But with us, yeah.
William and I genuinely want to know. We're that kind of fucked up.
Yep.
As I've had to tell my therapist many times, I'm like, William and I both amateur therapize each other for fun.
Yeah, that's what we
Like
do.
that's our particular jam, and it's probably not the best. Maybe we should just get out and play some sports, but it's what we do, and so we like to play some sports. Last minute episode title.
Yeah.
But we do like to hear because it changes things. Jazz and I just had a whole conversation about the Banshees of Inisherin, and then it
Good one.
made me think about a lot of bits differently.
Good conversation.
And also influenced other conversations I've had about it since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go to the blog and do that. Also write in, because maybe you don't want us to talk about William's lack of definition of his belief in God for an entire hour and a half. If you don't want that, well, then email us with other things to talk about. themagicaltalkingout@gmail.com. I'm not going to plug our other stuff. It seems weird. Yeah, this is not at all. Actually, I have a public service announcement. Don't anyone watch the movie The Estate that just came out in 2022. Stars Toni Collette, Anna Faris, David Duchovny, Kathleen Turner. It is about a movie about an elderly, wealthy lady who's dying, and all of her relatives show up to try and trick her into getting into the will, kind of thing. It is a black comedy. It is done perfectly well, except the writing and the direction, and based solely on that, it is one of the worst movies I have seen in a long time. Trish and I had to bitch about it for like an hour afterwards. It is awful. Don't see it.
Okay. Noted.
But otherwise, whatever. And yeah, come back next week and it'll probably be something different. That tends to be how we operate. We'll see. Oh, I was gonna hit the wrong button.